Kazakhstan's president has told police to shoot without warning as the crackdown on anti-government protests intensifies. Kassym-Jomart Tokayev accused 20,000 what he called bandits of rampaging through the largest city of Almaty. More troops from a Russian-backed security alliance have arrived to support the government. Demonstrations started several days ago, sparked by the rising cost of natural gas, but quickly turned into anti-government protests. Dozens have been killed, hundreds injured, and thousands arrested. NATO Secretary General says the military alliance and its allies are closely watching unfolding events in Kazakhstan.
We are concerned, we regret the loss of lives, and of course it is important that violence ends and that human rights are respected, including the right of peaceful demonstration and freedom of expression. And many allies have expressed this, and I expressed this as Secretary General of NATO.
Let's now take a closer look at the latest developments in Kazakhstan. Hermione G. reports.
The president of Kazakhstan says he's authorized law enforcement to use lethal force against protesters who he called terrorist militants and bandits. 26 protesters and 18 policemen have been killed since Tuesday when the violent unrest began, sparked by a sharp rise in fuel prices. Some 3,000 people have been arrested, according to the country's interior ministry.
It's the law and order that are the main guarantees of the well-being of our country. And not only Kazakhstan, but also all civilized states. This does not mean an attack on civil rights and human freedoms. On the contrary, as the tragedy of Almaty and other cities of Kazakhstan has shown, it's the non-observance of laws, permissiveness and anarchy that lead to the violation of human rights.
Russian troops have been arriving in Kazakhstan since Wednesday night after Tokayev appealed to the Russian-led Collective Security Treaty Organization to send troops to help restore order. Kazakh authorities say the troops won't fight the protesters. Instead, they'll guard government institutions.
For more on this, let's head to London and Adam Hugg, the director at the Foreign Policy Centre. Thank you for joining us at Euronews.
Good evening, Rick.
The crackdown by President Tokayev on this unrest has been severe. Thousands arrested and dozens of people dead or hospitalized. So there have been crackdowns before, but have they been similar to this?
No, this is unprecedented in scale and scope. You've seen over the last decade or so a number of major economic protests in 2011, which is probably the closest comparator around the Zhernozem massacre. But since then, you've had a number of economic protests around quality of living, the cost of living issues, as more and more citizens have been unable to benefit from Kazakhstan's wealth, under a continuing kleptocratic elite that runs the country. But you've also seen smaller political protests that have been squashed very, very hard by the government before. Previously, the economic protests has been, in recent years, particularly the mothers' protests and other protests in 2019, ended up with the government resigning and in that case, former President Nazarbayev standing down. The government tried that playbook this time, but it continued to increase. And you've had, obviously massive public and predominantly peaceful protests going on around the country. And then you've seen over the last few evenings, more violent looting and rioting, the cause of which is unknown, and it is very difficult to speculate because the internet has been down, communications in and out of the country have been very, very difficult. So trying to identify what lay behind that, by the sounds of things, potentially quite organised looting and rioting that took place and has taken the security situation away from the government and away from the peaceful protesters. That remains to be seen. But you've got a situation where the president is calling for the security forces to shoot people without warning. You've had a massive change inside the elite where former President Nazarbayev and his clan have been booted out effectively by all accounts. So there's real change going on both at a top level in Kazakhstan and on the ground.
Kazakhstan's economy is one of the strongest in the region. It's sitting on huge oil and mineral deposits. So how effective would it be if sanctions were imposed by the likes of the EU or the US on President Tokayev and or even Nazarbayev?
I mean, ultimately, the Kazakh elite has millions and millions of pounds, or euros, or whichever currency you want, in assets stashed around the world. There have been major reports by Chatham House and my own organisation, the Foreign Policy Centre, identifying some of the hubs for the Kazakh elite's international wealth. So use of Magnitsky sanctions, whether that's in the UK, EU or US, are an option to help put pressure on the elite and create some accountability for abuses that may be occurring at the moment. And I think that's something the international community has to look at very closely. I mean, obviously, I don't think anyone would be talking about wider society-wide economic sanctions, but I think there very clearly has to be accountability for some of the recent behaviour that we've seen over the last few evenings.